The only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle.
Which opportunity scares you the most? Because that's the one where you're going to grow the most.
I think empathy gets lost in a lot of things that we're doing. As we both work for insurance companies, insurance is incredibly boring. It's not that fun. But if you can start to put yourself in other people's shoes, the applications that you're working on, who they're helping.
Well, actually in software, there is no right answer. There is no best answer. Half the time, most of the time, it's, well, this is the least worst way to solve this problem.
I like to tell people that you do not need permission to advocate for the things that you're passionate about. And this has led to some really great opportunities for me. But I'm also going to learn this, because if you want to teach something, you have to learn it twice, right? You have to learn it on a surface level to understand it, and you have to learn it a second time to know it well enough to teach it back to someone. This is the Fundamentals of Software Engineering, and we are your hosts. My name is Dan Vega.
And I'm Nate Schutta.
And this is episode 5, Career Paths for Software Engineers. What do you want to be when you grow up? Nate, my friend, how's it going?
Living the dream. Some variant of it at least.
Yeah, if the dream wasn't in minus 10 degree weather, I would also be living the dream.
I mean, it is above zero, which is always nice to see. I mean, it is funny how your body adapts and adjusts, and what you think is warm or cold does change. My wife ran outside to get the mail or something, and she's like, "Actually, it's quite balmy." And I just looked at her and I said, "No, that's not the right word." Well, comparatively speaking, yes, comparatively speaking, it is balmy, but I would not call it warm by any stretch of the imagination. But it is better than the minus 20s.
Yeah, for sure. And we're recording this in February, which is, by calendar definition, the shortest month of the year, but for some reason feels like the longest month of the year. I don't know about you.
I don't know. I mean, January felt like one of the longest decades I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
So,
there's always that meme that floats around from, I forget what show it was, with Alec Baldwin and Lemon, where she goes, "Oh man, it's been a rough year." And Alec Baldwin goes, "Lemon, it's January 3rd. Yeah, right. I was feeling that. Cool. So we're going to have some fun today. We are talking about career paths for software engineers. And you might ask a question, Nate, which is like, what do you mean career path? I'm in that. I write code. That's what I do, right? But it turns out there's actually a lot of options out there, and it's nice to know these up front. So a lot of this inspiration from today's episode comes from the book, Fundamentals of Software Engineering. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, head over to fundamentalsofswe.com. You can learn more about the book there. You can get it on O'Reilly. If you're part of the O'Reilly platform, you can go ahead and pick it up on Amazon. All the info about the book and us and this podcast are on that website, so go check it out. But in chapter 14, I want to start with a couple of things. We started every chapter with a quote, and this one felt really on point to me, which was, the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. Steve Jobs. And I can agree with that. And we're going to talk about that today a lot, because, as software engineers, at least throughout my career, the tendency was, hey, if you're not happy, you got to jump around, right? Like, you jump around for pay scale, you jump around to find fit. And you really, if you're going to do this every day, this isn't like, hey, I got to go punch card in and punch a card out to clock in and clock out of work. You really got to enjoy what you do. It makes it a lot easier. I think we could all agree we'd probably rather just win $1 billion in the lottery and find some passion to work on, right? But if we got to work, you should enjoy what you do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it isn't interesting. It'd be great if we could all find lots of meaning and purpose and get paid, incredibly well. We don't always have that lineup, and you're not going to love every day on the job. There's no two ways about that. You're going to have some long days. You're going to have some days that are frustrating, that you're just, boy, I just don't enjoy what I'm doing. I mean, that does come with the paycheck. That's why they pay us, so it isn't always puppies and rainbows, but you do have to try some things out. And, I think sometimes we get stuck in this mindset that, well, but this is not what I have to do, and there's no other way to do it. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's one of the most remarkable sort of evolutions, even in my career, was to see how it isn't just banging out code 8 hours a day, Monday through
Mm-hmm.
Friday. There's so many other ways you can practice software engineering. You can be in this field, and I think it's just really important for folks, regardless of where you're at in your career, to realize that there are lots of other options and opportunities. And
Yep.
and as you sort of grow in your career, what gets you excited and what you get fired up about, it's going to change too. And the kinds of things that you really love to work on is going to evolve and change. And there's nothing wrong with
Yep.
that. You do have to kind of follow that muse, follow that passion.
Agreed. Now, when I opened up this chapter, I thought this was kind of a really good fitting to a way to kind of walk into this, which was when you begin your career as a software engineer, the path might seem pretty straightforward. Learn to code, get better at coding, and just keep coding. Right. As you grow in your career, you'll find that tech offers many paths forward, combining technical skills, creativities, and opportunity for growth. And I really relate to that. I didn't know any better. I was like, I'm going to learn how to code because I like doing this. This is fun. But I also thought like, hey, I have two paths in my career. I'm going to just code until I'm retired, or at some point I'm going to become a manager of people because that's what I saw other people above me doing. And I don't know about you, but that was kind of my outlook early in my career. And part of the motivation behind this chapter and this talk today is to like, hey, there are other options out there. How did you feel early on in your career?
Yeah, I had much the same experience, Dan, where you think, well, I just keep coding and maybe I get to do different types of projects or bigger
Yeah.
projects or more interesting projects. Maybe I'll become a tech lead and I'll be the one who's doling out tasks to other people. But it's just, you just code and then, different parts of the application, different apps. And then, yeah, if you really want to, you can go into people management. But
Mm-hmm.
those seem to be kind of the paths. And what I realized after a while is actually there's a multitude of different paths, and it really just depends on what your passion is. You and I both spend a fair amount of our time as architects, where you're being more of kind of that lead guide, whatever you want to call it, on a project that has a different set of challenges to it. Less
Mm-hmm.
coding, more people oriented things, dealing with agendas and influence, and a lot of herding of cats. I think that's a good way of defining architecture, frankly. But
Yeah.
then it's even just so much broader than that, and I think that's where I think my eyes really opened up probably over the last 15 years, that you can make a living in software talking about software. You and I have both been in the evangelism space for a significant amount of time. And, to me if you would have told me out of college that I would make my living talking about software, I was like, you're kidding me. That doesn't make any sense. I don't even like talking. I
Right.
didn't consider myself really an extrovert, for most of my career, until I'm like, oh, actually, I really do like being up in front of an audience and talking. I mean, we were at Codemaster recently, and, I had a blast. It was so much fun
Yeah.
pairing with you on that talk. And
Yeah.
I just really, that energy you get from the audience is amazing.
Yeah, and on top of that, like I would echo those some same statements. But early on in my career, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Wait a minute, you're telling me that in 20 years I'm going to be telling other people how to do this stuff because I'm lost right now. So how does that work out? And yeah, so it's hard to see the future, especially when you're caught up in, I'm just trying to learn this one thing before I move on to the next thing, and I don't understand this thing. So I think a good maybe intro to this, and we could probably spend an entire episode on this, so we won't, but let's just talk about our own career paths for a minute, just to give people an example of like how you got from where you are right now to like where you started. So kind of what's an abridged version of your career, and maybe what led to some of the decisions that you made to kind of move on to other opportunities.
So out of school, I wasn't actually even planning on going into the quote unquote real world. I was planning on going to get a PhD in computer science and go teach it. And I remember I guess it was my senior year, one of my former classmates had called me very early in the morning, at least very early in the morning for a college student, and was basically like, hey, I noticed you weren't interviewing. Did you want to sign up for an interview? And I'm like, if that makes this phone call end, yes. And so I signed up for an interview just on a lark, right? And so I interviewed with the company he was at. And when sort of a couple job offers came in the spring, and I started looking at some of my opportunities for grad school, I went, okay, so I can go be a poor grad student for another 6, 8 years, or you're going to pay me how much money and you're going to give me a bonus and like, maybe I'll work for a while. And so I went into the real world, joined a corporate company to do IT. I met some amazing people, some people who are still, friends of mine I still associate with. In fact, first book I ever wrote was with one of my early workmates there, Ryan Osselson. And, so a lot of these career things, in my experience, they don't make a lot of sense where it's not as clear as you're going through it. And it's only when you turn around and look backwards and you kind of see how things piece together, like, well, thank God that happened. As an example, fairly early in my career, I was really wanted to be an architect. I knew that was something I wanted to do. And I had an opportunity to join an architecture team. And, I just kind of kept getting, the person who managed that team was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll have a meeting with the team, let you introduce yourself, et cetera. I mean, he was ready to move me and then was being real cagey and kind of, blowing me off. And finally he's like, oh, yeah, the person who left, they're coming back. So sorry, I don't have a head count for you. And I was at the time kind of devastated by that. But in retrospect, it was really good that happened because I ended up meeting another good friend of mine, Nathan Good. And Nathan and I were getting coffee one morning and just out of nowhere, he said, I spent a lot of time at a Caribou writing my book. And I remember thinking like, wait, you're just a normal dude like me and you wrote a book. Well, wait, that means a normal dude like me could write a book. And so when Ryan reached out to me, coincidentally, just a couple of weeks later, was like, hey, you want to write a book with me? I was like, yes, I do. I mean, somewhat similar to the experience of me dragging you into this book project. You tweeted it out. I'm like, hey, I could make that happen. And
I'm going to have to pass this torch on to somebody else at some point in my life, huh?
That's how it works, man. Sorry. You're just going to have to take somebody for coffee
Passing
and
the
just
baton.
casually mention. Exactly. So, I mean, at various moments, opportunities come along and it's always challenging to know, well, should I take this one or not? And especially if you've got 2 or 3 options in front of you, it's like, oh, which one should I use or which one should I pursue? And, it's hard. I mean, I don't think it gets any easier. I've always tried to remind myself that none of these decisions are permanent. And so you can try it. And if it's like that worked or that didn't work, okay, you know more now, and now you can adjust and adapt. But I think it's that willingness to be open to that and to try some stuff out, experiment, and see what you like.
That's a great point. I've come across so many of those decisions in my career, and it really boils down to like just do the work, like do the homework on what you're trying to decide between. Like, should I stay at this job or move to this next one? Money's not always the deciding factor. You have to just weigh out all the pros and cons of what your move is going to be. And I've often just like, what do I feel? Like, what do I feel like is the right decision? And like you said, make a conviction there and just make a choice. And nothing is permanent. You can always make changes later. And I've certainly done that in my career as well.
I also think it's really important to use your network, to talk to your friends, your peers, your mentors. Yeah. It's just so important. And, I've been blessed to have some really great people in my corner. And so, Brian Getz has helped me a couple times as I've navigated this space. And it's just really reassuring when you can reach out to someone and be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What are you hearing? What do you think the pros and cons are? Because sometimes we get a little stuck in our own head, or maybe we don't see the picture as clearly. And the last time I made a job switch, his advice to me was I in retrospect, I think it's pretty good. Was which opportunity scares you the most? Because that's the one where you're going to grow the most. And it's like,
for sure.
Oh yeah, that's a good advice. Because sometimes we that fear prevents us from taking an opportunity that you might be really excited about, that might open doors you never even knew existed. And so if you're not open to that, and sometimes you got to take that risk and see what happens. And again, it's not a permanent choice. You can always adjust later.
That gives me all the feels, because I've certainly run across that. Like, a lot of times we want to make the easy choice, right? Like, this is the easy decision.
Comfortable.
I don't want to go through this 4 rounds of interviews with all these like extremely smart people, and I'm just going to look like an idiot. Like, I've felt that before as of, 6 years ago. So like, that doesn't go away. Right. And I was like, oh, this is pretty scary. But I remember thinking that, like, this is scary for a reason. Like the biggest growth is going to happen when you kind of take on those challenges that aren't, the same thing you've been doing over and over again, right? So yeah, that's a great point. That's really important to do in your career and in life, right? Like there are some tricky decisions in life, and sometimes those things that scare you and seem like they're impossible end up leading to some really great things.
Yeah, I mean, even when I think back to joining Pivotal, the team that I originally joined ended up getting disbanded, I think maybe 6 months or less into my experience. And I was like, oh man, did I just make a catastrophically bad decision to leave this comfortable corporate job I had to go to Pivotal? And I ended up landing on the advocacy team with, under Andrew and with Josh and everybody else and Tasha. And I mean, it was the greatest experience that I've ever had as an employee. And, I think thank God that team blew up, or, who the heck knows what I would be doing now. And so it's just, again, a lot of times this path while you're walking forward, boy, that seems like that was terrible. And I had this big pothole that I fell into. And it's only when you look backwards and go, well, thank goodness that happened. Because if not, like if I'd gone to that architecture team, if I hadn't met Nathan, if I hadn't gotten coffee with him and gotten the idea that I could write a book, would I have written any of the books that I wrote?
Right.
Probably not. Would I have gotten into all the technical speaking I've done? Maybe not, and so thank goodness that opportunity disappeared.
Yeah. And even those things that you quote unquote call a bad opportunity, like there were things I didn't like about a specific job. Like I dreaded going into work every single day, but it definitely like taught me some things. I learned some things that helped me grow in my career in that position. So yes, it was not a great experience, but I took a lot of positives from that. So even in those situations, we take failures as learning opportunities, learn from them. What did I get out of this? How do I not make this mistake again? Right.
Yeah.
So every opportunity is an opportunity to learn from.
That's a great point, because I've said this to my son multiple times. Making mistakes is not bad. It's
Right.
making the same mistake over and over and over again. It's not learning from the mistake that's the
Right.
problem. And so the only way you're going to learn and grow is to try things. And sometimes that means you're going to fail, or it's going to turn out to not be the right choice. But as long as you learn from it and adjust and adapt, to me, that's a feature, not a bug.
Yep. I'll tell you a little bit of my career path because I'm able to connect some dots now. So I ended up moving out to California to join a startup when I was 21, maybe 21, and I was like the seventh person in this startup, and I started out in a like technical support 2 role where I was kind of helping customers but working with the engineers. And it's funny, I can connect these dots now, but I specifically remember this was a time before YouTube, and I was in the Bay Area, but a time before YouTube, where I remember getting like the same inquiries from customers all of the time. Like, how do I do this? I'm running into this issue. How do I fix that? I made videos. I don't even remember what software I would have used in 2001 to make this happen. I don't remember it was probably like an onboard computer mic or one of those like headsets we had on a call center.
Yeah.
And I made videos of like, I'm tired of answering the same question. Go to our support page. There's a video that walks you through this. And now that I'm 25 years into the career here, I'm like, oh, wow, I really enjoyed doing that at that time. Now it kind of makes sense like where I am now. But like you can't connect the dots forward. It's really hard to. But one thing I can say now, if I was talking to younger Dan, is that, hey, that thing that you were doing that was in the role that you were hired to do, you found some passion there. Like it wasn't just solving a problem. Like you really enjoyed that process of creating a video and allowing customers to walk through that video and solve their problem, because it was another, outside of just documentation, it was another way they can kind of learn the software that they were getting trained on. And so I would say there's those little sparks throughout your career, and you have to notice them. They're not just like, it's not just happening in the moment for no reason. there are signals like, hey, this is something maybe I should like pursue a little bit more, and to take those seriously and see where those lead. Have you had any of those like, oh yeah, I really enjoy working with X or throughout your career?
Yeah, I think that that's a really good point, Dan, that you have to be observant and you have to be aware of when that opportunity presents itself, and also have enough sort of personal reflection to go, wait, I really enjoyed that. And I was surprised I enjoyed that. Speaking as a perfect example of that for me, when I think back to certainly like high school and probably even college, the idea of doing a presentation in front of the class just filled me with terror. Like, oh God, I just want to get this
Same.
over with,
Yep.
and it just, I hated doing it. And then, when Ryan and I wrote a book about Ajax, we did a few kind of user groupy things and stuff like that. And all of a sudden I figured out like, actually, I kind of like this. Like I enjoy teaching and I enjoy that conversation and that energy you get from a crowd. And so then it's like, well, how do I get to do more of this? And I was actually attending a no fluff event in the Twin Cities. And I just kind of pestered Jay and was like, hey, I've been doing a few presentations about this for the book. And, what would it take for me to get an opportunity to do this on the No Fluff tour? And I think mostly just to shut me up. He's like, okay, fine. Drive down to Des Moines, do the Des Moines show, and then we'll have you do this other show. And then if you survive, then you can keep doing it. And,
You survived.
I made a fool of myself. And it was, I will tell you, the very first No Fluff presentation I did down in Des Moines, Christine and I drove down after work on a Friday, and I go in the room, I'm getting set up, and my laptop decided to basically spontaneously reboot itself. One of those wonderful experiences. We're like, oh, and I was actually kind of glad it did, because I didn't have a chance to then get nervous as people were kind of filing in, and how it is when you're first getting started and, oh, there's people here, what do I do? And but my mind was focused on, I got to get my laptop to work. Come on, laptop, come back to me, laptop. And so I was all good. And my wife said to me afterwards, she said, I knew you were good as soon as you got the first laugh. And as soon as
Yeah.
that happened, I knew everything was good. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And once that happened, it was all kind of, the rest is history, as they say.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I think that, that was an early warning sign. And then there were, I just had progressions throughout my career, like, oh, I really enjoyed like working on like some of the front end things. And then I got into like back end development, and oh, this is really cool. Like, this is a different way of doing things. And I really enjoyed that piece of it. So yeah, I think, we talk a lot about this in the career management chapter too, which is like finding your passions, right? When you're early on in your career, you may be put on projects where you get to like do a whole bunch of different things, right? Like I get to work on the front end, I get to work on the back end, I'm talking to a database, I'm building a service that nobody else is going to see, but like other applications consume. I get to like make some decisions. How are we going to build this application, right? And so I think it's critical early on to like get into some different types of application. Now, not always possible, right? Sometimes we're put on a project and maybe you're on a year-long stint of like only doing this thing. And I get that, but there are other ways to kind of dabble in some of this stuff. So early on in my career, I built a personal website. Like, hey, these are the technologies I want to use. I want to have my own little corner of the internet. I want to be able to like write about the things that I'm doing. And so that's always been like an outlet for me too, is like, hey, I may not be able to have these opportunities at work to like build something like this, but in my personal time, I can bring it back to something about me and like work on the tech that I'm interested in. So, being able to adjust and being able to dabble in different technologies early on, I think is important, because you may not know what you want to get into. You may not have found that thing you're passionate about yet.
Yeah, that's a good point too, that you shouldn't expect to know as soon as you come out of school or on your first project or even your first company that this is the right place for you or this is where your passion lies. You're going to have to try some things, and that's perfectly natural and perfectly normal. And I think the other piece that I've often recommended to folks is, you should talk to other people in our industry and ask them about their background and their story and their journey. And, if you're curious, like, well, what would it be like to be an SRE? Okay, well, talk to some people who are SREs. Maybe you've got some at your company. Maybe you can find some on the interwebs. Just reach out. What's the worst thing that happens? They don't answer, and a lot of folks in our space, I think, are very generous with their time. And if you ask, hey, could I buy you a cup of coffee, or can I just hop on a 20-minute call and learn a little more about, how you got to where you are? A lot of people are going to say yes to that. And, you're going to learn some stuff that way. I mean, to your point, one of the threads I'm pulling out of what you're telling me, I knew you were out in California early in your career. I didn't realize it was sort of that tech support-ish role. Bringing that information from the customers to the engineers in a lot of ways is what we're trying to do as DevRel, dev support, where we're out there talking to end users, end customers, people who are playing with this day in, day out. And like, they keep repeating sometimes, we can take that back to the folks, say, hey, this sucks. Like, we need to fix this. This is not working.
Right.
And so I think there's some interesting threads that happen there. But again, if you don't even know that that's an opportunity, that's an option for you, how would you even know how to pursue it or how to find your way into that space?
Right. All right. I want to talk about some career options, because we've been hinting at this. We talked about, hey, I'm going to learn how to code. I'm going to get better at coding, and I'm just going to keep coding the rest of my life, right? Like, I'm going to get really good at this, and somebody's going to keep paying me to code. Turns out,
that's great if that's what you love.
For sure. And that's one of the paths. Like, there are certainly people that love that and are passionate about problem solving. I love problem solving. Even in my, roles today, even over the last few years, like, I am not in an enterprise working on product X every single day, but I still love writing code or letting my robot overlords write code, right? And I love problem solving. So that never goes away. At least for me, it hasn't. So that, yeah, absolutely. Great point. Like, if that's what you want to do, you can take on bigger opportunities, bigger roles, work with different types of applications. One thing that gets lost on this too is, like, we keep talking about writing code. And often, I talk to so many developers who found like real purpose in not just writing code, but what they're writing code for. Maybe you're working in the healthcare sector and, you have a real passion for kind of helping people. Like, there are a bunch of things you can do in healthcare that really help people out, right? I think empathy gets lost in a lot of things that we're doing. We both work for insurance companies. Insurance is incredibly boring. It's not that fun. But if you can start to, like, put yourself in other people's shoes, the applications that you're working on, who they are helping. Maybe some family is going through some issue where they have some insurance that needs to pay for medical bills, right? And your software is helping bring those families what they need, right? So not just like, hey, I'm here from 8 to 5, I'm writing some code, I'm producing this screen, right? Like, what are we doing with this? And I think that's something that we should all try to think about too, because that gives us more purpose than just kind of writing code.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the things that's been really fun for me in my current role is we talk to so many different types of companies across so many different industries. And, to me, that's another remarkable aspect of this, that software engineering is not just limited to insurance companies and banks and, large corporations. I mean, last year I was talking to a company that manufactured pressure tanks, and I'm like, what's that? And they're like, well, if you've had a glass of orange juice or a beer, it's been in one of our tanks, and they're a multi-billion-dollar company that creates pressure tanks, and so, I mean, there's just this countless ways that software it finds its way into different industries and
impacts
different
the world.
niches. Yeah. And so I think that's a really good point, that maybe what you're struggling with is, I'm not passionate about this domain. And if I went into a different domain, that might really excite me or get me fired up. And that's worth exploring as well. And I think that's really important, especially early in your career, to be open to trying some different things. Like, what's it like to work at a retailer? What's it like to work at a product company? What's it like to work, where this is kind of considered more dial tone?
if you love gaming, maybe you get into game development, right? Like finding
Absolutely.
that thing that sparks that passion, right? Okay, so as far as career options go, I want to talk about a few. Um, and I'm going to put these into a couple buckets because these are the buckets that we put in the book. The first is like a technical expert path. And this is really offering developers a way to advance their careers while remaining hands on with technology rather than transitioning into some other role, whether it be management or advocacy or something like that, right? And so the first one here is architect. And I know you have a lot of experience with this, but um, let's just talk about what an architect is at a high level. What should be some of those like early cues that like this is something I'm interested in?
Yeah, so architecture, we're trying to see the big picture, and so we're moving beyond sort of the functional requirements to the more non-functional requirements, the quality attributes, all the ilities around the software, the scalability, reliability, redundancy, et cetera. And so it's a coarser grained, larger sort of view of the space. And so if you find yourself getting to a point where it's like, yeah, the day in, day out coding, it just doesn't really fire me up anymore. But I'm really interested in this problem we're having with how do we serve 100,000 concurrent users? Like, ooh, that's interesting. So it's just a different scope. Now, you don't get to code as much as an architect. That's one of the trade-offs. There still is coding, but it's not day in, day out, multiple hours a day. You've got to leave that to your engineers. When I first became an architect, I was struggling with that transition because a lot of us kind of grow from kind of the tech lead, principal engineer, the person who always gets the hardest technical story to fix. And then you become an architect. And so your intuition, your instinct is, I'm going to go grab that. I'm going to go solve that. And my boss kind of pulled me aside and he said, hey, Nate, stay in your lane. All right. Like you're an architect now. So when you've got a leaky pipe in your basement, you go hire a plumber. The plumber comes in, they fix the leaky pipe. Let the engineers engineer. You got to see the bigger picture. You're responsible for the fact that we're putting an addition on the house, and you got to make sure that we didn't just knock out a load-bearing wall, and that we're still following all the local building codes, and that precipitation is going to sheet off the roof properly. You've got to see the bigger picture. Now, one of the pluses or minuses, depending on your perspective, is you deal a lot more with people in the architecture space, and you've got to kind of go up, down, and across your organization. So you do get exposed to pretty much everybody. And the biggest challenge in my experience is being able to take these messages and be the Rosetta Stone that translates it from, well, this is how I would say this to my developers. Now I got to go talk to the CTO and I've got to share the same message, but I'm going to use different language. And then I got to go talk to my VP on the business side where again, same message, but I got to translate it in a different way because otherwise their eyes are going to glaze over. So to me, that's a big part of it. You got to be able to understand trade-offs. You got to be able to understand like, when should we use something? And probably more importantly, when should we not use something? And that's something as developers, we tend to practice resume-driven design. And I want to put this on my resume, so we're going to add it to the project. And you can't really afford to do that in the architecture role. But I mean, to me, it's the most fun we can have in this space. But I'm biased.
Yeah, one of the things that I love that you say is that you, and I'm paraphrasing you, even though you're sitting right here in front of me, but you basically say that, like, as an architect, you should stick around long enough to see the outcomes of your decisions, right?
Yep.
And that's one of the things. Like, you talked about trade-offs and like weighing those trade-offs on picking certain technologies or going down a certain road, right? And I think, even the staff level engineers working on the application every day maybe don't have that insight. So maybe some issue comes in where the customer says, hey, the system's really like falling over right now. I don't know what's going on. And you have some observability into that to say, yeah, we've peaked over 100,000 users today. What could be causing that? You've made some of those decisions already. So at least you have probably a good level of overview as to what's going on. You may not technically know everything that's going on, but you could say, oh yeah, like we made this like decision with messaging platform X, right? Maybe that's causing an issue. And I think that's like a lot of fun of the part of like being a problem solver, right? Okay, there's this it's not just like a method in a code somewhere that's fumbling over, right? It is what is causing it in this situation to basically bring it down to its knees, right? And so now you get to go, okay, I know the system as a whole. I know some of the trade-offs we made. Let's start looking in this corner to see if that could happen. So if you enjoy, again, just little hints, if you've ever been brought into a ticket as a junior engineer or even a senior engineer, and it wasn't just, add feature X, it was try to find out what's going wrong here. And you enjoyed that going through and finding the problem there. And then that aha moment where you're like, oh my gosh, like I think this might be it. Maybe that's an early warning sign that you want to like deal with larger problems, right?
Yeah, and I want to pull on one thread there. You talked about you're probably not going to know it all. No, you will not know it all. I mean, these things are so broad, so big today. As an architect, you've got to get very comfortable with you're not going to know the answer instantly. And the way I've always approached it is my job is to go find the answer. Let me find out for you. And so I will track that down, and being comfortable in that ambiguity, being comfortable with the fact that you're not going to instantaneously have the answer. You're going to have to dig around, tinker, think about it, ponder, go talk to some other people, get some other input, and bring those stakeholders together sometimes to make the decision on how we're going to solve this. I think when I first came out of school, and school teaches you that there's like a right answer, and there's an answer that gets you an A and an answer that gets you a B. And then you get into the real world and you realize pretty quickly that, well, actually in software, there is no right answer. There is no best answer. Half the time, most of the time, it's, well, this is the least worst way to solve this problem. And so being comfortable in that environment, I think, is really key as well.
Right. And figuring out, all these trade-offs you talk about, you start to learn about these and it's like, yeah, there is no right answer. Like, are we maximizing for scalability? Are we maximizing for maintainability? Like all the illities in the architecture world that we talk about. But yeah, that's a lot of fun. So that is architecture. Another one there that we kind of mentioned was like tech lead, staff engineer. This is, hey, I started out just kind of working as a junior engineer. Maybe I went to a senior engineer and then a team lead. Staff engineer is an interesting title because I feel like every time I look around on job board postings, that's who pays the most is staff engineer. So if you make it to that or technical fellow or whatever it is, like that is kind of
weird.
Yeah, titles are weird, and I don't get caught up in titles. They're just titles, and they're really mainly for an organization to be able to put some kind of pay scale on it, right?
Right.
Staff engineer.
It's a bucketing process.
Yep. Staff engineer, kind of the culmination of this. Like, hey, I did learn how to code. I did get better at coding, and now I'm really, really good at coding. It's an excellent position to be in if you enjoy being in this world of like, yes, I like solving these problems. I like writing code. I like working with other engineers. This is a lot of fun. And if this is on your radar, if this is something you want to do, yes, by all means, stick to that. It's a great path to be on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when you and I overlapped at VMware, I believe we were either staff engineer or staff engineer 2. Not that I know what the 2
Yeah,
but
I know. Yeah, I still don't know. But there are some interesting things that you will get out along that career path too. Again, you'll work with a whole bunch of different technologies. You'll probably get to like a team lead scenario where like now you start to get that idea of maybe not managing people, but being in charge of a team, being able to make some decisions. Yeah, make some decisions on where we're going with some things. That might lead to like, hey, I really like this architecture thing, or like, hey, you just said you in the architecture role, you work with a lot of people, you touch a lot of different points. Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I like staying buried in my laptop with my headphones on and writing code. That's what makes me happy. And that's great. I think there's no wrong choice here, right? What we're trying to do is just put some of these out there and really try to focus in on some of the cues that come up in your career. Like, this is something I really enjoy working with.
Yeah, I'd say the staff engineer 2, whatever we want to call that, you're going to get a chance to do some architectural things. I mean, that continuum between design and architecture, it is a continuum. There is no sharp, real break. I mean, there are some things that I would definitely say this is architecture, this is design, but a lot is somewhere in between. And so you'll get exposure to some of that, but it will allow you to stay more on the technical side. You won't have to deal with some of the politics and agendas and influency type stuff that you
Meetings.
have to as an architect. Yeah, you probably will have fewer meetings, hopefully, and it does allow you to really get into that technical, nitty gritty. It also typically means at a company that when there's a new, really important initiative, guess where they're going to go to staff that. If this is the mission critical, this is the company, this is our new moonshot, you're probably going to have a chance to work on some of the most impactful stuff within your organization.
So that was kind of the technical path. I also want to talk about the leadership path. So the leadership path offers developers opportunities to guide teams, shape product direction, drive organizational success. And we'll start with kind of the engineering manager. So engineering managers lead development teams by focusing on people, process, and delivery. This really sticks out to me. They're really good at building effective teams and removing obstacles. Some of the best managers I've ever had in the engineering space are really good at removing obstacles. We talked about meetings. Nobody wants to be dragged into 1,500 meetings a week because you can't get anything done. So a lot of the managers I've had have said, nope, his calendar is not open. You are not allowed to just throw meetings on it. They must go through me first. And so if you enjoy leading teams, building effective teams, removing obstacles, aligning technical work with business goals, while also supporting individual growth, right? Some of the best engineering managers I've ever had have regular meetings with me. Like, what are you trying to do in your career? Like this, again, you aren't here to just write code. You are a person. I want to help you grow. And so, some of the most impactful people in my career have been engineering managers.
It's a really, really hard job, because you've got to have enough of the technical background to know what's going on there, to have some of that credibility. But then you need that people, budgeting, leadership, influence, politicking type stuff that, like, we don't teach you that in computer science 101 or 201. You got to pick it up on the job. And so it is really hard. I mean, it's, I've had a lot of managers over my career, and it is a challenging role to fill. You've got to be open though to the part, like, I'm going to help people grow in their career, and I'm going to try to get to know them and you're going to have some tough conversations. There's going to be, I had one person tell me that, oh yeah, being a manager is kind of like adult daycare, because, you periodically have to step in and pull two kids apart that are having a tiff. And so you've got to deal with some of that stuff, and so you've got to be open to solving some of those problems, and they may not be, as easy to solve as some of the technical ones. I mean, I was just talking to somebody about this week. If all of our problems were technical problems, like, this job would be so much easier. But it's like, oh no, their problem is, like, these two people aren't getting along. So how do I smooth that over? How do I fix that? And those are really interesting problems though too. And if that's something that you're interested in, don't close yourself off to that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. The other side of this too, I put in the book, was a technical product manager. So these are someone who kind of bridges the gap between the business needs and the technical implementation. They define the product vision, prioritize features, collaborate with both technical teams and the business stakeholders to deliver valuable solutions. And this is an important role, especially when we're building software. Like, not all the engineers that I've worked with, like, not everyone has the vision of, like, what this product can be or should be. Sure, they can code the heck out of it and they could build any feature you ask them to, but just because you can build a feature doesn't mean it needs to be in the software, right? So you need to have someone in this space who is able to work with both the business and the technical people to kind of make these things come alive.
Yeah, and to be able to understand the marketplace and what is a good market fit, what is the market need, demand, because there's a lot of things that's like, oh, that'd be a really cool feature, but is it necessary? Does it help? Is this going to make something better for a customer? There's a lot of software over the years that you've had a lot of stuff added onto it, and it just makes it worse. And so sometimes the hardest part is saying, nope, we're not going to actually pursue that feature at all. That's just not going to happen.
And usually you can learn a lot from talking to your customers. Do we want all engineers talking to customers all day? Probably not.
See, now I'm thinking about office space.
Yes.
to take the requirements from the fax machine because I'm a people person.
So you physically take them? Well,
Yes,
no, my assistant
sometimes
does.
my secretary, but yeah, exactly. But I'm a people person.
Yeah,
The engineers, they're not
sure
people
you are.
persons.
Those are kind of two buckets: the technical path, the leadership path, and then inside leadership, kind of an engineering manager and a technical product manager. Again, part of this is just making you aware of some of these things. If you're at least aware of them on a surface level, then we can start to recognize some of these hints that come up. One more bucket I want to put in there is like an alternative path. And this is kind of beyond the technical architect, the leadership. Software engineers can pursue innovative careers that combine technical expertise with other disciplines. The first one is something we're both kind of very familiar with, which is being a developer advocate. This is kind of the bridge between companies and their technical communities. They help users understand and adopt technologies while bridging community feedback into the product teams. So similar to a product manager, right? But you're dealing with more of the engineering side and the customers than just the business. As you said at the beginning, part of our job as an advocate is to go out and talk to the community. We give talks, but we also get feedback. Hey, what are you enjoying about this software or this product? What could we do better? And go back to the engineering team and say, because I hear this a lot from the Spring team who work on one of the biggest frameworks in the world. It's like we get requests for things. We also have some ideas of how to shape the software or the framework. But until it's like in the hands of real customers at scale, like we don't know some of the things that you're using it for. We need to hear that. And so being able to take those real world use cases, those customer stories back to engineering teams while also helping, educate the developer community at a whole is part of, being a developer advocate.
Yeah. And it's building community too and bringing people together. And I find that very rewarding, very motivating. And it's amazing what happens when you connect people together. And some of the most rewarding experiences I've had in my career are just introducing two people to one another, and all of a sudden, like they hit it off, they make a connection, they go build something together, or just I didn't even know you were here, and oh my God, now I just found my best friend, or I just found someone who's going to hire me for my next job, or wow, you have the same problem I have, I'm not alone. Oh, you made me feel so much better about what I'm dealing with, and to me, that's an important part of it that. It's hard to quantify a lot of that. And I do think that's one of the things I find kind of annoying when companies start really driving down into, well, how many minutes a day did you spend on this? And how do you measure the impact of that? And, some of these things are fuzzier and it's hard to draw that direct connection between I did ABC, which drove XYZ of shareholder value, and I do realize that some companies adhere very closely to the spreadsheet view of value. But, to me, that's a really important piece of this is bringing folks together, teaching, learning, taking that feedback back to go, God, this is just too hard. We need to buff these rough edges off. And, here's yet another problem we have. We need to fix this. And this isn't coherent. People don't know what to do here. And they're not giving us that feedback. Like that's one of the interesting things. When people are giving you feedback, that's a good sign usually. When they stop giving you feedback, that's scary. Because
Crickets.
Does that mean they're not using it? Or does that mean they're so angry with us that they're just like, I've given up even trying to tell you what to do here, So.
Right. Yeah. So I would say, there have been some kind of cues in my career that this was something I really enjoyed doing. Again, I started a personal site, early into my career. I started writing blog posts because I came across this issue and, I didn't have videos and GitHub and YouTube and all of the great documentation we do today. I had to scour the internet for answers and try to find why is this thing not working? And I finally had that aha moment and I'm like, man, I don't want anybody else to have to do this. I'm going to write this up. So if somebody searches the internet, they'll find my article on this and hopefully it'll save them 2 days of banging their head across the desk. Right. So there was
we
that.
Also have to
and
walk uphill through the snow both ways, just to be clear. But
yeah.
How many times have you searched for something only to find something that you wrote?
At least 100. So many times. I'm like, oh
So,
yeah, I did write that and I did figure
yep.
that out already.
So
So,
sometimes, I guess if we're looking at this in the most positive light, I am writing this for other people to help other people. Yeah, sometimes it's more
and
selfish
me.
than that. I'm just writing this
Yeah.
to remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know I'm going to get old one day and I'm getting older and I forget things now. So
Amen to that.
some other kind of keys, I think, insights to this is like, if you find yourself within your organization, I know in a lot of orgs that I've been in, we do a lot of lunch and learns. Like if
Yes.
you not only enjoy attending, but hey, I'm giving this talk on this tool we're using now, and I want to teach other people how to use it. That might be a cue that like, this is something that excites you, being able to teach other people or inspire other people, bring communities together, as you said. Advocacy can be a definite role for you. So, the other thing with advocacy, I want to kind of point out, I like to tell people that you do not need permission to advocate for the things that you're passionate about. And this has led to some really great opportunities for me. Even if you're in a position where maybe you're a staff engineer right now or a junior engineer, and like you found this really cool tool and it's made you way more productive and you use it a little bit different than others. Write about it, do a video on it, give a talk about it at a conference. And you never know where that's going to lead, because if that's something you're interested in, I was an advocate for Java and for Spring long before someone was paying me to do so. And look what it led to there. So just because it's not your full-time role, you don't need permission to do that. Get out there and talk and spread the word about the things that you're really enjoying working with.
Yeah, 100%. And that can always start internally. I think sometimes the hardest part is, well, I don't know how to begin. Okay, well, if you are passionate about something, if you're really interested in something, or you just need some motivation to go learn something, volunteer to give a lunch and learn talk at your office in a month or two. I've done that multiple times, where I'm like, oh, I'd like to learn more about this. So I'm just like, okay, in 2 months, I'm going to give a presentation on this. That's really
Yeah.
good motivation. Now, Venkat does I'm going to write a book about it, but he's remarkably lifelike. So I wouldn't recommend that approach. That's a very advanced technique. But giving a talk at work is definitely a lower sort of barrier of entry, lower stress level, and to me, that's how a lot of us, frankly, get started here. I'd also push hard on the lunch and learn concept, because I am such a big fan of that. If you're trying to nudge your organization, to influence your organization, getting a lunch and learn series up and running is a fantastic way to do that. Now, we just kicked one off here internally, focused on kind of Microsoft Azure technologies. And the funniest thing is, I had a meeting almost right after that, and one of our people's like, can we do that for Google too? And I'm like, yeah, we can sure spin something up, and so we're already starting to see some momentum just off of one of these, and that's how this stuff grows. And so don't be afraid to put one of those things out there. I mean, what's the worst thing that happens? 10 people show up. Okay, well,
and I think the lunch and learn, as you said, a couple of points there you kind of pointed out, like it's much easier to give a talk at work and a lunch and learn because you're familiar with your coworkers. Like you probably hang out with some of your coworkers, right? Like there's less anxiety around doing that than talking to even a meetup group where you don't know 20 people in a room, right? When you have that familiarity, it's less nerve-wracking, and it's much easier to just focus on, hey, I'm just talking to some coworkers and telling them about this cool thing I worked on. And two, something you pointed out there, motivation to learn something better has always been another thing. I want to write a blog post on this. I want to do a video on this. Yes, I'm going to help someone with this, but I'm also going to learn this, because if you want to teach something, you have to learn it twice, right? You have to learn it on a surface level to understand it, and you have to learn it a second time to know it well enough to teach it back to someone. So yes, I enjoy teaching. I enjoy helping people. I am also a little selfish. Like I want to learn this thing myself and understand it at a much better level than I do now. So big fan of that. Okay, two more in this bucket I want to talk about. Sales engineers. And I don't think we talk about this enough.
No.
Combining deep technical knowledge with a passion to help customers find the right solution to their problem. They serve as technical experts during the sales process, demonstrating products, addressing technical concerns, building trust with prospective customers. This is for developers who enjoy explaining technology and working with people. And I've come across some really great sales engineers in my time. And I think this is again, like you said before, like being able to take that technical expert you have, working with people in a different fashion. But yeah, not just selling a used car to someone, right? Like you are finding the right fit for someone and delivering solutions to real problems that they're facing.
Yeah, I think too often we equate sales with
Yeah.
used car salesmen, and that
Get
it's
get
a
this. You
little
got to buy this.
icky and sleazy, and we're trying to, don't look under the hood because you're not going to like what you see, and we're trying to lie to you, and then that's not what it is. It's not what it should be, right? And I mean that's at least partially my role these days is in that sales engineering space, and I mean I don't want. So I can tell you some things I love about it. Like the variety is insane. The amount of people you get to talk to and interact with. The schedule can be a little hectic because you never know when that call is going to come in. And it's like, oh, the client can meet at 3:00 today. So we're meeting at 3:00 today. Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And, so I also learned that almost every call also involves a pre-meeting and a post-meeting call, so there's a prep and then there's a debrief. And so, pretty much however much time that meeting is, just double it. And that's probably how much you're really going to spend on it. But the variety is really exciting. The pace can be both invigorating and exhausting, depending on the org. But, you get a chance to help people and to see a bunch of different problems and be able to look at it and say, oh yeah, that's really cool. Like, I think we can do A, B, and C for you. And like, how do I shape that solution? How do we shape this so we can help you? And to me, that's what it's about, is how can I help you solve your problem? And a lot of it is kind of being a little bit like an armchair psychiatrist, like, oh, okay, tell me more about how that makes you feel, and being able to kind of pull that stuff out, but you still are engaged in the technology. You've still got to know what it is that your sales folks are selling, but it does pull you a little bit away from kind of the banging out, code day in, day out. And it is a bit like what we've done in advocacy, where I keep hearing the same problem over and over from our customers, hey, R&D, let's go fix this already.
Yep. And I had two bullet points in there in the book that kind of align with advocacy, right? Require strong presentation and interpersonal skills alongside technical expertise. And hey, you often get to travel to clients and trade shows because sometimes you got to meet the client where the client is, right?
And sometimes the expense accounts are really nice, that the kinds of things you can get away with in the sales cycle, in terms of, we're going out for dinner and we're taking the client, so we're going to the really good steak place, and yes, we are going to order that bottle of wine, so some of those restrictions are eased when you're in the sales cycle, and so that can actually be a lot of fun. And yes, the travel can be enjoyable as well.
All right, one more, and we'll kind of wrap this episode up with a couple last thoughts. But technical entrepreneur. So entrepreneurs can leverage their engineering expertise to build products and businesses from the ground up. They identify market opportunities, develop solutions, and navigate the challenges of creating sustainable ventures. So this is really interesting to me. Like, if you are have that kind of entrepreneur mindset, right? Like, I want to build solutions to problems that I've come across, right? How do I do that? You can take, as an engineer, you can take your engineering skills and like build, real solutions to these problems. I also think this is an interesting time that we're in with AI, right? We've been given a lot of these tools that lowers the floor, raises the ceiling for a lot of engineers or people who don't even have engineering backgrounds. Really good ideas, understand like market fit. And so I think this is an interesting bucket. I will say too, some of the, we talk a lot about like this era that we're in with AI and maybe displacing some of the junior engineers. If you're a junior engineer and you can, and you have ideas and solutions to problems that are out there, instead of the traditional route of maybe taking an internship and, working for free for 6 months, or taking that one junior developer job just to get some experience, this might be a possible route to go down, especially with all the tools at your disposal these days.
Yeah, and I think when you the people I know that are really entrepreneurial, they see a problem and they're like, I have a
Mm.
unique solution to that problem. And
Yeah,
so if you've got that kind of itch and the idea of building a company is exciting, you don't need to become, 100,000 person company to be successful.
for sure.
There's countless examples of small
Oh my gosh.
companies that are
So many.
solving so many cool
And,
problems.
and like not some of them aren't even cool. Some of them I see these like things out there, I'm on social media all the time, and there was this one developer who stayed like a solo developer probably his entire career. I think at a boom he developed some like WordPress script that I don't even remember what it did. It was literally a one-page script, and this person was making $300,000 a month from a WordPress script. And I read all these little like niche stories all the time of like somebody found a problem, came up with a cool solution to it, and was able to just like make a whole bunch of money off it and do some fun things with it. And I think the opportunities today are endless of things you could build.
Yes.
So yeah, that's really interesting. There are people out there that are just really good at coming up with ideas. And if you're one of those people,
Very attuned.
yeah, this could be a bucket for you. So, I think that's where we'll kind of wrap up. We'll get to our favorite segment, in just a second. I just want to kind of recap with the career management chapter. We went through a lot of the different possibilities out there. I think for me, one of the things that stick out from today's conversation is like just be in tune with the things that you're doing, the warning signs or the indicators that this is something I'm really interested in, and follow that. Don't just like let it go by, because as we've kind of pointed out in this episode, there have been indicators for us early in our career that like, oh wow, this is something I'm really interested in. So follow those things, follow your passions, and we'll probably get into this into another episode. But there are the idea of understanding some of these career paths, right? That's step one. Step two is walking that career path.
Yes.
There are some things that you can do deliberately to make sure that you get there and not just sidetracked on shiny new object syndrome every time something comes out, right? So maybe we'll cover that in a future episode. Nate, any kind of final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would just say be open to opportunities. Don't feel like you're in a cul-de-sac in your career that, oh, this is all I can ever be. Be prepared to try different things. Be willing to try different things. Don't be afraid of taking a risk now and again. You might be amazed at where that gets you. And I'd also again point out, if you are curious about a specific part of software engineering, reach out to someone that's doing that, whether they're in your own company or somewhere out in the universe here. Reach out and just ask a few questions. Again, a lot of people will respond, some won't, but that's okay. And you'll be amazed at what you find if you just ask, and you might go, oh, wow, that's amazing. Or, ooh, yeah, I have no interest in that. That does not, work for me at all. And that's great too.
Yeah,
There's
know
just
that
as
up
much
front.
value in
Yeah.
learning, oh, that's not what I want to be when I grow up. I had a friend of mine whose son was shadowing as a student teacher because he really wanted to be a math teacher. At least that's what he thought. And so he had an opportunity to shadow for a semester. And he was kind of nervous going in. And he's like, well, Dad, what if I discover that I don't like teaching? And he's like, great.
Right.
Better to know now than
Yeah.
when you're actually a student teacher and you're going to face a classroom in the fall, so
Can you
better
imagine
to
going
figure
to
it out sooner than
school
later.
to become a doctor only to get into your first job and then figure out you don't want to be a doctor? That
Boy,
would
being a
be,
doctor sure sucks. Yeah, or a lawyer. I mean, I think that happens a
yeah,
lot with lawyers. You go through
yeah.
all that education and all that work to pass the bar, and then you're like, oh, this is the job? Ugh. So, yeah, finding out that something isn't the right fit for you sooner than later is a very good thing.
This brings us to our final segment, Nate. I got the most wonderful Christmas gift, and it's a little sign here that says, tell me a dad joke.
I love it. All right, well, I've got one here. So, why do trees seem suspicious on sunny days?
Something to do with shade?
That's correct. They just seem a little shady.
They do. That's a good one. I like that. Too good, too good. All right, my friend. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. Again, if you want to find out more about the book or this podcast or just Nate and I, head over to fundamentals.swe.com. As always, if you have picked up the book, you're reading it online at the O'Reilly platform, or you've purchased it on Amazon, or you got one of those Amazon gift cards for Christmas, go ahead and use it on that. We would love some feedback on it, whether it's just send us something on socials. I could put it on the website if you want. Leave a review on Amazon. I love seeing those. We got 2 5-star reviews on there, which I've been really excited about. So feel free to reach out with feedback. We'd love to hear from you. With that, that's the pod, Nate.
Smash
we'll
that
see you
like
in the next
button,
one.
subscribe.
All the things. See you, friends.
Cheers.